You're looking at the result of 6 months of doing absolutely nothing. Most gardeners work twice as hard for half the harvest, simply because they're growing the wrong plants. Today, I'm showing you a root vegetable that weeds itself, defends itself against pests, and multiplies every single year. It tastes like apple crossed with honey, with almost no calories. But there are 2 mistakes that will quietly destroy half your crop, and most first-timers make both of them. But first, why has a root that fed Andean farmers for centuries never made it into American backyards? I'll answer that at the very end, and the reason might surprise you. Here's what we're covering. First, why most garden plants are actually fighting against the lazy gardener, and which one fights for you. Second, the biology that makes this plant genuinely different, why it tastes like apple and honey with almost no calories, and how it handles its own pest control. Third, the exact 3 steps for planting, forgetting, and harvesting, plus the 2 mistakes that ruin the crop for first-time growers. This is about 10 minutes. Let's go. Your back can't handle weekend weeding anymore. Pests wipe out months of work overnight, and you can't even visit your grandkids without your garden dying. None of this is your fault. Most vegetables were designed for commercial farms, not for real life. So, what does a plant that actually works for you look like? Meet the one that's been hiding in the Andes for centuries. This is Yacon, a relative of the sunflower, originally from the Andean highlands of South America. It's been feeding high-altitude communities for centuries, and it grows in most of the continental United States, anywhere you have a frost-free season of 7 months or longer. Quick question, what's the one vegetable you've completely given up on? Drop it in the comments. This might be its replacement. Remember the weeding problem? Here's why Yacon solves it without you lifting a finger. Yacon grows 4 to 8 feet tall. That canopy, combined with a thick mulch layer at planting, blocks almost all sunlight from reaching the soil. Weeds can't germinate in the dark. You get 5 months with 0 weeding required. Now the pest problem. Yacon's leaves are covered in microscopic hairs called trichomes. Those trichomes continuously release compounds that naturally repel aphids and leafhoppers. In most documented cases, growers report near 0 pest pressure on Yacon. No spraying, no hand-picking, no intervention at all. The plant handles it. And the watering schedule problem. Yacon stores more than 70% of its weight as water inside those thick roots. It evolved to survive drought at altitude. 1 watering per week in summer is enough. Go visit your grandkids. The plant will be just fine. Now, here's what makes Yacon truly unusual. Pull one of these roots from the ground, rinse it off, and bite in raw. It tastes like apple crossed with honey, crisp, juicy, and genuinely refreshing. Here's the interesting part. Most of that sweetness comes from a unique, natural sugar that your body barely absorbs. Think of it like a locked box. Your tongue tastes the sweetness through the gap, but your stomach doesn't have the key to open it, so it passes through mostly intact, adding very little to your calorie count. That's why you get apple and honey flavor at a fraction of the calories of a sweet potato. If you love discovering overlooked, low-maintenance crops like this, hit subscribe. Now, let's look at the 3 steps. Compare Yacon to Jerusalem artichokes, which many lazy gardeners already love. They're easy to grow, but they're notorious for causing serious digestive discomfort. Some gardeners call them fartichokes. That nickname is earned. Or sweet potatoes, wonderful, but around 112 calories per 100 grams. They need full sun, regular watering, and a lot of horizontal space. Yacon gives you that apple honey sweetness at a fraction of the calorie load, with almost none of the maintenance. Yacon handles all three of these on its own, but only if you get the planting right, and most first-timers don't. 3 steps. And I want you to remember something before we start. The less you do after planting, the better the results. That's not a tagline. That's literally how this plant is built. Step 1. Get it in the ground. After your last frost, for most of the United States, that means early June, dig a hole about 1 foot deep and 1 foot wide. You're planting the rhizome, the small, pink, knobbly piece at the base of the plant, not the large brown root. I'll explain that distinction in a minute, because mixing them up is the most expensive mistake first-time growers make. Place the rhizome in the hole, cover with about 6 inches of loose soil, and leave 2 to 3 feet of space between plants. Then, lay 3 to 4 inches of mulch right away. That mulch, plus the coming canopy, is your weed prevention system for the whole season. Step 2. Walk away. I mean that. The canopy handles the weeds. The trichomes handle the pests. Water once a week during summer heat if there's no rain. If your soil is reasonably fertile, skip the fertilizer. Yacon actually prefers benign neglect. You're not being lazy, you're working with its biology. Step 3. Harvest. You'll know it's time in one of 2 ways. The plant produces small yellow flowers, that's your signal. Or the first frost kills the foliage and the tops collapse completely. Either one means dig. Push your spade in, pry upward, and look at what comes out. Roots the size of sweet potatoes, 10 to 15 pounds per plant in most documented cases. But don't eat them yet. This is actually where most growers make their second big mistake. Fresh dug yacon is good, but cured yacon is something else entirely. Set the roots in a cool, shaded, well-ventilated spot indoors for 1 to 2 months. During that time, enzymes in the root convert inulin to fructose. The flavor intensifies 2 to 3 times. That faint apple sweetness becomes unmistakable. Now the 2 mistakes. Mistake 1, confusing the pink rhizomes with the edible storage roots. The pink, knobbly pieces at the crown, those are your seeds for next year. Do not eat them. They taste unpleasant, and more importantly, you lose your entire planting stock for the following season. Simple rule: pink and knobbly at the crown means next year's seed. Brown and smooth hanging below means tonight's snack. Mistake 2. Storing the rhizomes wet. If you rinse them and seal them in a container before they've fully dried, even a little surface moisture, you open that container in spring to find everything rotted. Cut the stalks back to about 2 inches, rinse and then dry completely in moving indoor air. A fan works well. Once they're fully dry, store them in dry sand or dry sawdust at around 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Never let them freeze. Those 2 rules, know your roots apart, store them bone dry, are the difference between a 10-pound harvest and nothing next spring. Now let's close the question I opened at the very beginning. Yacon's canopy eliminates your weeding. Its chemistry eliminates your pest problem. Its roots multiply themselves every single year, giving you free planting material indefinitely. The sweetness is real. The low-calorie load is real. The 10 to 15 pound harvest from one forgotten corner of your garden is real, as long as you avoid those 2 rookie mistakes. And plant it and forget it isn't marketing. It's literally how the plant is built. The less you do after planting, the better. Now, why hasn't Yacon made it into American backyards despite being eaten for centuries? Here's the honest answer. The storage root has very thin skin. It bruises easily, loses moisture fast, and simply does not survive commercial shipping. Grocery chains cannot stock it. For a commercial farm, that's a deal breaker. For your backyard, that's your advantage. You grow it 20 feet from your kitchen. No shipping required. Here's what I want you to do. Find one Yacon rhizome. Etsy has them. Local seed swaps often do too, or search for cultivariable online. Plant it in the worst, most neglected corner of your garden this June. Just one. Because next fall, when your neighbors ask what that giant plant is, and they will ask, you'll be the one handing them rhizomes to plant. That's a good feeling. Now you have a crop that grows itself. But if you want another zero-effort vegetable to plant right next to your Yacon, click the video on your screen right now.